was some left over, as the Lord had said. The word of the Lord.
He answers all our needs. The hand of the Lord feeds us. He answers all our needs. All your works shall thank you, O Lord, and all your faithful ones bless you. They shall speak of the glory of your reign and declare your mighty deeds. The hand of the Lord feeds us. He answers all our needs. The eyes of all look to you, and you give them their food in due season. You open your hand and satisfy the desire of every living thing. The hand of the Lord feeds us. He answers all our needs. The Lord is just in all his ways and holy in all his deeds. The Lord is close to all who call on him in truth. The hand of the Lord feeds us. He answers all our needs.
Our second reading today, taken from Paul's letter to the Ephesians. To preserve the unity of the Spirit means to share intentionally and willingly with one another our common spiritual values in a practical way.
A reading from the letter of St. Paul to the Ephesians. Brothers and sisters, I, a prisoner for the Lord, urge you to live in a manner worthy of the call you have received, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another through love, striving to preserve the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. One body and one Spirit, as you were also called to the one hope of your call, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Our gospel today is taken from St. John's. The entire 6th chapter of St. John's Gospel is dedicated to our Lord's teaching on the gift of the Holy Eucharist. Today's reading begins by fulfilling that image that is given by Elisha in establishing his own credibility among his disciples, his power to do what he says that he will do.
Alleluia.
May the Lord be with each of you. This is a reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. John. Jesus went across the Sea of Galilee, and a large crowd followed him, because they saw the signs that he was performing on the sick. Jesus went up on the mountain. There he sat down with his disciples. The Jewish feast of Passover was near. When Jesus raised his eyes and saw that a large crowd was coming to him, he said to Philip, "Where can we buy enough food for them to eat?" He said this to test him, because he himself knew what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 200 days' wages worth of food would not be enough for each of them to have a little. One of the disciples, Andrew, the brother of Simon Peter, said to him, "There's a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what good are these for so many?" Jesus said, "Have the people recline." Now there was a great deal of grass in that place, so the men reclined, about 5,000 in number. Then Jesus took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed them to those who were reclining, also as much of the fish as they wanted. When they had had their fill, he said to his disciples, "Gather the fragments that are left over, so that nothing will be wasted." So they collected them. They filled the 12 wicker baskets with fragments from the 5 barley loaves that had been more than they could eat. When the people saw the sign that he had done, they said, "This is truly the prophet, the one who has come into this world." Since Jesus knew that they were going to come and carry him off to make him a king, he withdrew again to the mountain alone. The Gospel of the Lord. You may notice that for the next 5 weeks in the liturgical cycle, we're going to emphasize the Gospel of St. John, and explicitly we're going to highlight the gift of the Eucharist as being central to our faith. Now today, I'd like to talk about spiritual combat. But in order to do so, I'd like to set the scene. These last couple of weeks, I've emphasized in my homily both the obligation to come back to the Eucharist on a regular basis, especially on Sundays and Saturdays, but also the responsibility we have that when we have problems or difficulties, to come back and to use the sacrament of reconciliation. This past week, a number of my sisters gave me a particular website to follow for some 21 days. And as you may or may not know, in order to establish a habit, it usually takes 21 times. And so the particular readings that I'm following are from a military chaplain on spiritual warfare. And it's on goodcatholic.com if you're interested. But he gives both scriptural and anecdotal information on how to fight the good fight. And as I've been reflecting on this, I was reminded of things that I grew up with that for the last 40-some years, people may not have had contact with in a direct way. One of the things that I remember as I was growing up was that all of the males in my family line, both fathers, grandfathers, uncles, they were all called to serve our country. They were drafted. In my father's case, he was a Marine, and he went to war over in Korea, he was what they called a forward observer. He would call in artillery strikes on the enemy. And it was difficult for my dad to talk about that time, but one of the things I got out of him was the fact that he came back with a bad back, and he mentioned the fact that the other person who jumped him didn't come home. He never talked about it. But the presumption was that in time of war, you have to defend your own life, but you're also called to defend the life of others that you love. And one of the things that I learned from a very early age is to bring in the big guns. Don't presume to use your own strength when fighting the battles.